The Excelsior space explorer, a sleek spaceship, the Excelsior, glides through the cosmic stillness, illuminated by distant starlight. The planet Toy 733b looms ahead, shrouded in mystery. In the quiet solitude of the space station, Captain Belmoth's eyes fluttered open. He stretched, his joints popping like a pattern of ancient machinery coming back to life. The cold metal walls of his hibernation pod reflected the soft blue light of the waking systems, and he felt the gentle hum of the engines beneath his feet as the ship, the Excelsior, slowly reduced its speed. The air had the scent of recycled oxygen and a hint of something new, something that didn't quite belong in this sterile environment. As the captain pulled himself out of his pod, the other crew members began to stir. They had all been chosen for their unique skills and bravery, a diverse group of individuals who had signed up for a mission that would shape humanity's understanding of the universe. The whispers of waking crew members grew louder, and soon the corridors were alive with the sounds of boots against the floor and the rustling of fabric. The ship's computer announced, "All crew members, report to the bridge for mission briefing." The bridge of the Excelsior was a symphony of screens and consoles, each crew member taking their station with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Captain Belmoth stood at the center, his eyes scanning the room, ensuring everyone was accounted for. He cleared his throat and began. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final stretch of our journey. The planet Toei 733b is now within our reach, and our mission is to establish humanity's first colony on an exoplanet." The room was filled with a murmur of awe and anticipation. A month into the approach, the routine was shattered by an unexpected alert. Mechanic Shu's voice crackled over the intercom. "Commander, we've got an unidentified object on the sonar, and it's definitely mechanical." Captain Belmoth and Lieutenant Gregor rushed to the control room, staring at the blip on the screen as if it might offer them answers. The tension grew palpable as the object grew larger, and soon everyone on board knew that this was no natural asteroid. The alien spacecraft loomed into view, a colossal hunk of metal that dwarfed the Excelsior. It was scarred with the ravages of time and space, a silent testament to a civilization that had long since passed. The ship's scientist, Tanya, spoke in a hushed tone. It's beautiful, but also eerie, like a tomb floating through the stars." Captain Belmoth nodded gravely. "We need to investigate. It could be our first contact with an extraterrestrial species." Gregor and Shu were chosen for their bravery and expertise. They donned their spacesuits with trembling hands, checking and rechecking each seal and connection. As they stepped into the airlock, the gravity of their mission weighed heavily on their shoulders. The hiss of the air escaping and the thunk of the outer door sealing shut echoed through the tense silence. The vacuum of space greeted them, and with it, the vast emptiness that surrounded the two men as they floated towards the derelict vessel. Their boots magnetically clamped onto the alien hull, and they moved with the precision of dancers in the zero-gravity ballet of space. The entry hatch was a puzzle of unfamiliar symbols and mechanisms, but Zhu's mechanical intuition guided them through the process. As the door slid open, the cold, stale air of the abandoned ship hit them, carrying with it the faint scent of decay and something else, something that made the hair on the back of their necks stand on end. Inside, the corridors stretched out before them like the bowels of a metal beast, lit by the flickering glow of emergency lights. The walls were etched with the alien script, a language that whispered secrets only the long-departed crew could understand. They moved deeper into the ship, their breathing the only sound in the suffocating quiet. The air grew colder, the atmosphere heavier with each step. As they approached the glowing object, Gregor's heart raced. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a pulsing sphere of light, the center of which seemed to beckon them closer. Shu, ever the scientist, reached out to touch it, but Gregor grabbed his arm. "Don't. We don't know what that is." Shu nodded, his curiosity tempered by fear. The static grew louder on the radio, crackling in their ears as the signal grew stronger. Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered back to life, revealing a chamber that had been hidden in shadow. The walls were lined with pods, each containing what appeared to be the remains of an alien creature. The sight sent a chill down Gregor's spine. "We need to report this," he said, his voice shaking. As they turned to leave, the floor beneath them shifted, and a low rumble resonated through the ship. The pods began to open, one by one, revealing desiccated husks that were once beings with dreams and purposes of their own. The glowing sphere pulsed faster, the light casting grotesque shadows across the room. Shu's eyes widened in horror as he realized what they had unleashed. "We've got to get out of here now," Gregor barked, his voice cutting through the dread that had taken hold. They sprinted back the way they came, their boots clanging against the metal floor. The ship had come alive around them, the air thick with a malevolent presence that seemed to be closing in. The corridors twisted and turned, leading them in a labyrinth of terror. The walls began to pulse with an unnatural rhythm, the lights flickering erratically. It was as if the ship itself were trying to disorient them, to prevent their escape. Shu's breath came in ragged gasps as he struggled to keep up with Gregor. They could hear the distant echoes of something moving through the ship, something that didn't belong in this ancient tomb. As they neared the airlock, the ship's gravity fluctuated wildly, tossing them around like rag dolls. They grabbed onto anything they could, their hearts racing as they fought against the unseen force. Gregor shouted into his radio, "Commander, we're on our way back. The ship is alive." The static grew louder, swallowing his words. The creature that emerged from the shadows was unlike anything they had ever seen. A mass of writhing tendrils and gleaming black eyes that bore into their very souls. It moved with a fluidity that defied the laws of physics, and its hiss sent waves of terror through their suits. "Go! Get out of here!" Gregor yelled, pushing Shu ahead of him. They stumbled through the corridors, the creature's pursuing presence growing more intense with each passing second. The ship groaned around them as if it were alive and angry at the intrusion. The air grew colder, and the metal walls felt slick with a slimy residue that seemed to ooze from the creature's very essence. Shu's heart pounded in his chest, and he could feel the cold sweat pooling in his spacesuit. The airlock grew closer, its light a beacon of hope in the terrifying maze of the alien ship. Gregor's breath was ragged in his ear, the sound of his own fear echoing in the confined space of his helmet. "Keep moving," Gregor panted, his voice a mix of desperation and command. "We're almost there." But the creature was relentless. Its shadowy tendrils reached out, snaking through the corridors with a speed that seemed impossible. Shu could feel it closing in, a cold, malevolent force that sent chills down his spine. He stumbled, and Gregor's grip on his arm tightened, urging him forward. The walls around them bulged and contracted, the metal groaning as if in agony. The airlock grew nearer, the light from the Excelsior a beacon of safety. Shu could see the panic in Gregor's eyes reflected in the visor of his helmet. "We're not going to make it," Gregor shouted, his voice barely audible over the creature's hissing pursuit. "Get out of here, Zhu. Save the mission." He shoved the scientist toward the airlock and turned to face the monster, his hand reaching for the sidearm at his hip. Shu stumbled into the airlock, his mind racing with fear and disbelief. He slammed the button to seal the door, his eyes locked on Gregor's silhouette shrinking in the distance. The creature was almost upon him, tendrils reaching out like the grasping hands of a drowning man. Gregor's gun fired, the muffled sound echoing through the ship. But it was no match for the alien horror. On the bridge of the Excelsior, Captain Belmoth's knuckles turned white as he gripped the railing, listening to the chaos over the radio, the screams of his friend and colleague, the panic in Shu's voice. And then silence, the kind that only comes when all hope is lost. The static grew louder, a cacophony of interstellar whispers that seemed to mock their plight. What happened? Tanya's voice was barely a whisper, her eyes wide with horror. The captain's gaze remained fixed on the airlock's sealed door, as if willing it to open and reveal the safe return of his men. "We've lost contact," Captain Belmoth said, his jaw clenched. "They encountered something we weren't prepared for." The silence that followed was thick, a stark contrast to the cacophony of moments ago. The crew stared at each other, the reality of the situation sinking in. The mission had taken a terrifying turn. "Should we send a rescue team?" someone ventured, but the captain's expression was grim. He knew the risks they had taken and the potential consequences. "Negative," he responded firmly. "We do not engage until we know what we're dealing with. Seal off all airlocks and prepare to disengage from the alien vessel." His voice was a whip crack in the tense silence, snapping his crew into action. The bridge was a flurry of movement as the crew raced to follow his orders, fear etched into every face.